What up, this is Rama Screen covering movies, TV, and entertainment, and here's my review of Netflix series Grace and Frankie New Season 6. Hey, before you watch this review, please subscribe to my channel, press that like button, and ring that bell so you can get notified whenever I post new videos. And if you would like to help support this channel, please do so at patreon.com/ramascreen. That's patreon.com/ramascreen. Let's rock this. First up, I would like to say thank you to Netflix for granting me the screener to the entire 13 episodes of this new season. I am a big fan of Grace and Frankie. So in this review, there will be a bit of recap just to give you context and to refresh your memory on what happened prior or previously. So heads up there. Those parts might get spoilery. Is it just me, or shows about old people are just so much fun? Between this and the Kaminsky Method, and of course the classic Golden Girls, there's just something about senior citizens that are just so hilarious. And just like kids, old people say the darnest things, especially when they try to keep up with what's cool and hip today. But I think part of what makes Grace and Frankie particularly appealing and special to me is not only their sweet, sweet friendship, but also the writers of this show have always wanted from the very beginning to point out that being old does not mean that you stop learning or stop growing. It does not have to mean a final chapter. Season after season, we see Grace and Frankie and Saul and Robert try out new skills, take risks on new business ventures, and open themselves up to new relationships. Yes, issues with age being up there do get incorporated, such as health scares and insecurities, but having someone to share your twilight years with as you continue to reinvent yourself is at the heart of Grace and Frankie. But I do have some notes about it though, so buckle up. For those of you who may not be familiar with this show, Oscar winner Jane Fonda plays Grace, and Oscar nominee Lily Tomlin plays Frankie, two women whose lives are suddenly turned upside down when their husbands reveal that they are gay and leave them for each other. Both sparring partners and partner in crime, Grace and Frankie develop an unlikely bond to face an uncertain future together and discover a new definition of family with laughter, tears, and plenty of mood enhancers along the way. Okay, here comes the part where I say, heads up, spoiler alert! At the end of previous season 5, you would recall that it was sort of like an alternate reality episode. You see, Grace and Frankie were not on speaking terms, and they imagined what life would have been like had they never spent time together as friends. And then that episode ended with Grace dropping the surprise bomb that she had married Nick the night before. Okay, now this season 6 pretty much picks up exactly where that left off. And the first few episodes are about Frankie getting used to not having Grace around as much anymore because, of course, Grace has to be with Nick. Luckily, Nick is this billionaire who occasionally has to work overseas, so we, the audiences, are still treated with Grace and Frankie's shenanigans whenever Nick is out of town. If you're wondering how the comedy in this new season holds up against previous years, don't worry. It is still just as hilarious. Do you remember the old British lady Joan Margaret who works as the assistant to Grace and Frankie? Even Joan Margaret gets her own episode focusing on her dilemmas. So in terms of whether or not this new season 6 can equally make you laugh, you have nothing to worry about in that department. The quality of this show's comedy does not go downhill at all. Now, the only criticism that I have is that Grace and Frankie are developing another new business. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not trying to poo-poo that at all. But we've seen this before. They became entrepreneurs with that vibrator thing, remember? So the scenario of them having to prove themselves again as entrepreneurs, though this time through a different product, just seems so redundant. Like the writers are running out of ideas. I totally understand that the purpose is to drive a wedge between Nick and Grace's marriage and Grace and Frankie's friendship, but the way to lead to that, or the way to go about it, is uninspired. On top of that, maybe it's just me, but in this new season, it seems that the writers make Grace out to be the bad guy in that friendship more often than necessary. I mean, in the past, it was always a bit even-handed between Grace and Frankie. Sometimes Frankie is at fault, while other times you can put the blame on Grace. But in this season 6, Grace constantly has to be the killjoy. Similar problem can be also said about Robert and Saul. After 5 seasons of them not being honest with each other and then being honest with each other again, them holding secrets from one another and then getting back at each other for holding those secrets, it seems that this is the only song and dance number that they've got. So, while the comedy and the jokes still run strong, the storylines sadly are slowly faltering. As far as their grown-up kids go, the only one that's kinda left out is Mallory. Everybody else seems to have something going for them, to the point where I kinda feel bad for actress Brooklyn Decker, because it's like the show just suddenly sidelines or benches her more often now than they did before. I personally don't think that she is the weakest link, but the show most definitely treats her that way. Having said all that, there is, however, one episode in this new season 6 that is my ultimate favorite. It has to do with the funeral of a friend whom Robert barely remembers from his time in the military service. The revelation by the end of that episode will move you to tears. And I think Martin Sheen does an outstanding job in his performance. Don't get me wrong, I still love this show. And the reasons that you had for loving these characters, all those reasons are still there in this season 6, and I will continue to follow them to the ends of the earth. You still get those irresistible banters. Jane and Lily are still on top of their game, and they can still perform whatever situation that you throw at them, even if it feels recycled in its nature. But we gotta approach things objectively, and fact of the matter is, Grace and Frankie had better written, much more solid seasons in the past than this. All that season 6 shows to me is that everybody involved with this show is ready to move on once the curtain closes after season 7. And thus, these new 13 episodes are merely stalling the inevitable.